Continuing on with the reassembly, the last video we finished by getting all of these rockers, everything tightened down and set to 0 lash, and now we're going to move on to the intake manifold. And if you watched the video where I was painting all of the parts, I had mentioned that I may have to replace this intake. Well, that's what I had to do. This is the big heavy cast factory intake, and the fear is that there's maybe a hole or something burned in that channel between 5 and 8 back there. Both of them were missing, 2 different carburetors, and both of those cylinders still weren't firing. So just kind of cause and effect, you know, trying to figure out what may lead to that. Troubleshooting it, everything else checks out fine. Valves, spark, carburetors, everything kind of leads us to the intake manifold. So I replaced it, and I got an aluminum one, and we're going to see if that fixes the problem. Putting the manifold on is pretty simple. It literally just sets right in between those heads. You'll have a long gasket that goes right there in between the manifold and the head. The holes for the ports, they match up. You know, no matter how you flip it this way or that way or this way, you can only match it up one way, so you won't get it wrong. Same thing on this side. Use some silicone RTV right here on this front edge. Your kit's going to come with 4 pieces. A long one on the side, a long one on that side, and then 2 rubber ones, one for the front and one for the back. Get rid of these rubber ones. Don't even use them. Just put about a 1/4 inch bead of silicone right there and make it overlap the corners of your side gaskets. Do the same thing in the back. Put you a good heavy bead. I've kind of wiped this one up, but when you land that thing, a little bit's going to squish out. Put a bead there and make sure it kind of overlaps the corners of your factory gaskets that you're putting on. The side gaskets, that is. Remember, just toss those little rubber pieces that go right here. Get rid of them. They're crap. And then it's 16 bolts all the way around. And look, even painted my bolt heads orange. Isn't that cute? The bolts torqued down to 25 foot-pounds. So there you have it. All the accessories I still got to get on. You know, my water ports and the water neck with the thermostat and the this and the that. Yeah. Anyway, there we have it. Intake manifold is on. Next, we're gonna go. I'm gonna kind of lube this valve train up, and then the valve covers are going on, and we're gonna keep moving forward. So that's what we'll do next. Let's jump on those valve covers. And there you have it. Valve covers on. Pretty simple. 3 bolts on the inside, 4 bolts on the outside. I put down a thin coating of silicone, and then I put my new gasket, and then on the inside of the actual valve cover I put a thin layer of silicone around this edge, this lip, where that sits right on the gasket, just to kind of seal everything together, and then set it right on. Pretty simple. Okay, those are on. Now that you know, most of the top side is done here, as far as what I need to do now, I'm going to move on to distributor. Okay, that's the distributor. I've got the cap off for now because we're going to have to look at some stuff. That rotor sits on top of the distributor. Okay, and it rotates, hence the word. Okay, see that? Rotates around. This is the one, this tab right here is what you want to have pointing at your number 1 cylinder. And this down here is what will connect into the top of the oil pump. And there's a bar. If we can we get enough to turn this upside down here? See that bar right there? That bar is going to coincide. See the way that's pointing? Let's see, from this clock right now, that's pointing up to 1 o'clock. Come up here, that's pointing up to 1 o'clock, that rotor. So that bar will coincide with the same direction that that rotor is pointing, okay? Now, when you put it in the engine, let's get a little flashlight. It's going to go right here on the back side in the center, top of the manifold. And if you look down in here, oh, that's bright. You see that little circle with the notch running through it right down in there? That is the top of the oil pump. That's where you're going to land that little bar at the bottom of the distributor. See the way that's pointed? Hold on, get my light on it again. Hang on. That bar is pointed. Let's turn straight on it and let's look up right out at the number 1 cylinder. Okay? If we match that that little bar at the bottom of our distributor, match that up with the angle of that top of that oil pump, this bar needs to set in there. This bar right here needs to set down in there. That will have this rotor pointing at the number 1 cylinder. And as long as we're set, and when we did the timing and everything, we set that, and we know that that number 1 piston is at top dead center, and we're set at 0 down here. Everything is top dead center. Timing will go in pointed at the number 1 cylinder. Theoretically, we're timed at 0 degrees. There's some fine adjustments that'll probably need to be done. I don't know how to do that, but the basic setting of the distributor is pretty simple. Just line it up, set it in. I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Let's see how it looks. All right, trying to get this in here. If you'll notice, remember you've got these gears. So as this goes in, it's gonna kind of turn, right? So we're trying to get that bar to line up with the little slot down there in the top of that oil pump. So we're gonna have to compensate a little bit so that when it goes in, it rotates and falls into that slot. And we wanna be pointing at that number 1 cylinder. Wanting that rotor to be pointing at the number 1 cylinder, okay? So let's give it a shot. Got my gasket on, right here, got the gasket on. And I'm gonna back it a little bit past where I want it to be. And see, can we land it right on that spot there? And there we go. Okay. Let me get this. Alright, you can see when we get it down all the way, this will land, okay? So that's not quite landed down. When you get that rotated all the way in, it falls into that slot, boom, that will be sitting. This flange will be sitting right on that. So this isn't quite all the way in. So got to do a little rotating to get it to fall on down in there. There we go. A little bit of wiggle jiggle. And it's seated in there nice now. Got the keeper back on, holding that thing down, snugged up. One thing I did do that I forgot to mention, on the front of this thing, if you'll see, I've got a little green mark there. See that mark? That's so when I put the cover on, or the cap, the distributor cap on, my number 1 will be lined up with that green, so that I know everything's lined up right. So speaking of that, well, let's go ahead and do that. And I've already hung my spark plug wires on here. Alright, I'm going to set it up with number 1 right over that green mark. Make sure these little tabs are out of the way. And before you latch it on, make sure it's set on there correct. There it is. It'll kind of set down on there and be solid. Use a flathead. They've got these spring-loaded tabs down here. Push it in.
Oops, wrong way. Push it in and just roll it underneath. And it kind of falls in its little groove. Push it in, roll it underneath. Alright, now that's on, not coming off. So, let's come back around and I'll show you what I was saying. So I've marked the top of this distributor cap. So there's the firing order. 1, 8, 4, 3, 6, 5, 7, 2, back around to 1, and 1 is right over that green mark. See that green mark down there? And there's our number 1. It's right over top of it. So I know that I've got that sitting right where I want it to be, so that when that rotor passes by, the spark signals, and then round and round we go. Also, another thing that I do is I take, initially that is, so this is my number 1, right? Spark plug wire. So I will chase it down. Number 1 spark plug wire. I will chase it down. And put number 1 on the boot. A lot of times it's printed on the actual spark plug wire, but if it's not, I put it on the boot so when I'm grabbing, you know, everything's going on initially where it's supposed to go. And the last thing here is you got your little clip, your plug for your distributor. Make sure it gets some power. Plug it in. Right there. And lastly, you're going to run power to it. And that's that. Distributor is in. Sorry, the camera's all over the place. Distributor's in. Everything is set up. So theoretically, that should be timed and we should not have any problems. So from here, I think the engine probably goes back in the truck. There's a few little things that I'm going to still put on top, but all of this front pulley system I'm going to do once it's back in the engine bay. Less weight and things in my way, you know, a little more cumbersome to put it back in. So once we get it in, we'll do that front system, but I think we're pretty close now to getting ready to put it back in. So anyway, there you go. There's valve covers obviously, and distributor set in. All right, hope you're enjoying it.